You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Aingeal Rose and Ahonu.
Hi, I am Ahonu, and this time I'm speaking from a different mountain. In the past it was Thumb Butte in Prescott, but now we're in the mountains of Sedona, and perhaps you can see the red rocks behind me. And these rocks have been here for millions of years, and some people estimate that they have been underwater twice in the vast history of time. And that's interesting because it means some things survive despite what's going on in the world. And in our case, we're also here. Humans are still here, as we have been for millennia and are still here. Now, the reason I'm raising this is because we get contacted by so many people who are afraid of the future. They're in fear about pandemics. They're in fear of government policy. They're in fear of the threat of war. They're in fear of the poisoning of food. They're in fear of perhaps having no water. And certainly in this area of the high desert in Arizona, it is a real issue. There's no doubt about it. But having said that, more rain fell this year than, I don't know, there's been floods, there's been incredible amount of water that has fallen. And while that might be upsetting for some people, because we also have friends of ours who have said, look, I've got 4 feet of water in my basement, all our documents were flooded, all our possessions were, and so on. And sure, that is a fearful thing. I know, I've encountered it myself, where it's very, very, very frustrating, and it's very hard to predict. Is it going to happen again next year? Will it happen every year? Perhaps I won't get insurance for it to cover me, or whatever. The point being that we can let all these day-to-day issues prevent us from living in the moment, and we can prevent them from allowing us to understand that we are eternal. Now sure, the body dies, but in terms of the divinity of ourselves, we are eternal, and we come and go, and we will be here again, and all of that. So that's the reason I'm coming to you today, is to reassure you that we're not just the mere mortals that we think we are. We're not subject to all the fear-mongering that's going on. We can surpass and overcome all these things. And sure, somebody puts a gun to my head right now, it will raise fear. There is such a thing as fight and flight, and there is such a thing as the body's natural reaction. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture says, don't be afraid. Guys, you're here. You've been here billions of years. You'll be here for billions and more years. So look to the big picture. Look to your divinity. Look to the fact that you're God-given. You're God-made. You're God inside and outside. And therefore, anything on the outside that attempts to threaten has no value, has no weight. So it's a big lesson. And I take it very seriously in that sense, but I also take it very lightly. So there you go, all I've got from the mountain today. Blessings from myself, Ahonu, and from Aingeal Rose. Now, since I made that video, Aingeal Rose and I sat down in the car by the Red Rocks, and we went into the records to discover more about fear. Have a listen. Hi, I am Ahonu, and this is my lovely Aingeal Rose.
It's taking my hands away from my face.
Aingeal Rose is going to be on the cover of my new book. Yes, and it's coming out very soon. Wait till you see. It's called The Angel of the Forest, and she is indeed my angel. And there's a lot of information in there about twin flames, so watch out for it. But the reason we're coming to you today is we want to talk about fear. And fear has come up because a lot of people have mentioned in our conversations and in our connections with people all over the world about their unsure, uncertain, and afraid of what's going on in the world. And we can understand why that would be. There's posturing going on between China and Russia, and saber rattling between the United States and Russia and the Ukrainians and the Western alliance of NATO and so on. So this idea of fear came up for discussion, so much so that Aingeal Rose is going to be presenting it in her monthly Reflections in Consciousness. That's part of the World of Empowerment. If you're interested in joining that, you'll find it's an engaging discussion every month on various topics. This time it's fear. But in order to try and get some answers ourselves, we've been asking questions about fear ourselves. And one of the things that Aingeal Rose put to me this morning, which I found pretty enthralling, was, do spirits, people who are dead, do spirits feel fear? And I thought that was a pretty powerful question to ask, and I'd love to get to the answer. So, do you want to say something about that before I venture to say what I think about it, Aingeal Rose?
I don't really have an answer for it right now. Ahonu just said this morning when I was asking Source about fear and consciousness. Source had said that consciousness doesn't experience fear, that it's only love and intelligence. So I thought that was interesting, because then I said, well, what does experience fear? And it basically said the body does. You know, since our body is really an animal body, that we have an instinctual nature just like animals. And we experience fear when we feel threatened in some capacity. But then it's an instinctual act. So I don't really have the answer on when you're out of your body completely, do you still feel fear? Or do entities in other dimensions feel fear? So I don't know yet, Ahonu, so we'll be interested to see what you think.
Well, my opinion, and that's all it is, because normally to answer these questions, Aingeal Rose goes into the Akashic Records and gets answers directly from Source. And my opinion right now, which is subject to change and is certainly open to correction, is that spirit entities can feel fear. And the reason I think that that's the case is because we're familiar with disincarnate entities and spirit bodies around the place that can be negative in their influence. And for that's the first reason I think that they can feel fear. Secondly, I think that the reason they're hanging around and the reason there's a lot of negative spiritual energy around Earth is because they feel the separation from the God source. And that separation in itself engenders fear about what's going to happen to them, and will they just go back to space dust, and will they become non-entities, or what's going to happen. And I think that's a very real fear that spirit beings have. The other reason I'm coming to that conclusion myself is because there was one time many, many years ago, we asked a question in the Akashic Records about spirits, and we found that spirit beings are not necessarily the perfect beings that we thought they were. Do you remember that, Aingeal Rose? And I think part of that was coming from, we were exploring death in general, and we found that spirit beings, even though we're led to believe through religions and upbringings and all the rest of it, that, you know, after death you're in a spirit body and everything is perfect, and we found that that's not necessarily the case. So that's the third reason why I feel that spirits still feel fear. And then I think the final reason is that a lot of times, as we know from the testimony of people who have had near-death experiences, they are creating still in their, I won't say minds, because the brain aspect of their mind is dead at that point in time, but in their creative ability after death, they're still creating scenarios. And we know this from the people who have had near-death experiences. In fact, there was one friend of ours one time had 4 near-death experiences. And and they feel fear in that place. Not all of them, but many of them do. And that's...
But I think that's because they're still tethered to their bodies.
Right, but yeah, so they're still tethered. So that's what I mean, that perhaps there's some issue about how free the spirit really is. So in other words, if the spirit can be really free of earth and the physical realm, then perhaps it may also dispense with fear. But as long as it's tethered by way of relationships, by way of karma, by way of feeling that something is left undone, by way of guilt perhaps, and a lack of forgiveness, if they haven't completely freed themselves from the body, then I do feel that there is fear in the spirit world. So that's only my own personal opinion now.
So then that does open another whole can of worms,
It does.
in terms of consciousness. Because if Source told me consciousness doesn't feel fear because it's composed of love and intelligence, then that brings up a whole other question about consciousness then. So that's for another day. I can't tackle that today,
Okay, so we'll leave that for another day. So we'd love to hear your opinion, and so please do connect with us and let us know what your own thinking is about fear in the body and in the spirit world. We'd love to know. So until next time, blessings from myself, Ahonu, and from Aingeal Rose.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and on our website at worldofempowerment.com.
Don't miss an episode. Hit the subscribe button now.